Total War Warhammer 3's launch is just around the corner, and there are a lot of different options for campaigns in the base game across Cathay, Demons, Ogres, and Kislev. Altogether, you're looking at 11 legendary lords, and with that is quite the decision of which campaign you want to play. In this video series, I'll be giving you a spoiler-free campaign overview to help you decide if it's the right campaign for you. Each campaign will play differently with an emphasis on a particular playstyle, unit choice, or mechanic. Our next video in this series will highlight Zhao Ming, the Iron Dragon of Cathay. He rules over the Western Provinces region as he struggles to retake Shenyang from Cathayan rebels, using the might of alchemy. You'll be able to find the rest of these videos as they're made linked in the playlist in the upper right corner and end of this video. And if this is your first time on my channel, the way I do these videos is by giving you a no spoiler breakdown. I'll boot the game up on turn 1 of the campaign, I'll explain the mechanics of the character in question, show you their skills, quickly show off their research tree, and then give you an overall idea of what the campaign plays like. Keep in mind this is not a guide, but a quick campaign overview to help you decide which campaign to play when Total War Warhammer 3 launches. Feel free to jump ahead to any part of the video that interests you the most using the chapters denoted in the timeline and the description. Before we get started, if you have not yet pre-ordered Warhammer 3 and intend on buying the game, you can support the channel by using the link to my Nexus Store. Nexus provides Steam keys directly from the developer, and I get a cut of every sale, which helps keep the channel alive. Lastly, if you end up enjoying the content, please don't forget to like, comment, or subscribe. I cannot tell you how much it helps out. Let's get started here on Zhao Ming's campaign summary in Total War Warhammer 3. Loading into the campaign here, we're at turn 1 for Zhao Ming, and let's take a look at some of his mechanics and other things of that sort. Now, as a quick disclaimer, this is an early access build, so some of the numbers that you see here could change, but the overall feel and the mechanics of this campaign will not change. Let's go ahead and take a click right up here and look at the ruler of the Western Provinces, his faction effects. This gives him a maximum cargo capacity of an increase of 20% for caravans. That's part of the Ivory Road mechanic we'll get into in just a little bit. Hero recruitment rank +5 for alchemists. You get 2 different heroes as Cathay, either the alchemists or the astromancers. And then an upkeep reduction of 25% for ogre mercenary units, and then an armor of +15 for melee units. That's really Zhao Ming's focus is on melee units versus Miao Ying's is a focus on ranged units. So with Cathay, we have got a number of mechanics, and depending on which video you're going to be watching right now, I'm going to go over the Wujing Compass and the Ivory Road right now, and I'm just going to use the same footage for Miao Ying. So if you watch that video later, or you're coming from the Miao Ying video, they might sound exactly the same. That's just because they are exactly the same no matter what character you're playing. Let's take a look at some of those mechanics. So here we have the Ivory Road, and the Ivory Road mechanic is the same whether you're playing as Zhao Ming or as Miao Ying. Let's look at the start location for our caravans. They're going to come around from this region, and they're going to go through down toward their respective destination. Let's just click this one and we'll talk about destination in a little bit. So you can see that this kind of highlights the route you'll be taking. And on this, you'll see the crossed swords that dictate the overall threat of certain portions of that route. So this is going to denote from here to here. There's another one that'll probably be at this portion, then another one that'll go to this portion. And that threat is dictated by 2 things. One, it's going to be dictated by the faction or your diplomatic relation of the faction that you're going through. So you're going through some territory that you're at war with someone. So it's at a high overall threat. But if you keep using this route a bunch of times over and over, bandits will expect to find goodies on this route from your caravans, so it will increase the threat level. So this kind of encourages you to have multiple destinations, or even pivot your destination halfway or midway, or whatever point. Halfway and midway tend to be the exact same thing, at whatever point during your caravans kind of trouncing across the Darklands here. So you can say, hey, you know, I'm going towards this destination, but it starts to get really bad right around here. So I'm actually going to divert and go down towards Sylvania, or just whatever it is. You basically divert the route of your caravan to maybe dodge certain high threat areas that were not high threat when you started the route originally. So that is how the route and destination portion of this work. But if you take a look at these destinations, you can increase the overall cargo value of your caravan. So if you look over here at Sylvania, it's 2,400. To reach this location. That's how much money we'll get once our caravan reaches there. Let's go to 1000, which is the default. So that goes to 4K as a reward for arriving. But since we're playing as Zhao Ming, let's increase it up here. So now we get 4800. So it was pretty much 400 per 100, right? And once you reach that location, you also have a chance to get a unique item. In my playthrough, I went to Sylvania and then I got the von Karstein blade as a sword, which was just a great little boon to my campaign. Now, the other thing I do want to talk about is your Caravan Master. Now, the Caravan Master is never a character you will control directly. It will always be a character that will just run these routes back and forth, and you can equip them and you can level them up, but you cannot ever directly control them. So let's go ahead and press Recruit Caravan. You'll notice too that the Caravan Master does not really have any impact on your yin and yang harmony, which we'll talk about in just a little bit here. But looking at this, every single Caravan Master will have this little modifier. So this one says Nangao Ties. This allows him to have additional gunner units and then armor piercing missile damage plus 15% for crane gunner units, which gives this guy 2 crane gunners and then the rocket battery, which is actually a really solid Caravan Master, to be totally honest. But some other things you'll see is stuff like Ogre Friend, which puts more ogres in the army here, or maybe even related to the Empire, and you'll have more Empire units, just a ton of different things. So always look at this when you are selecting your Caravan Master. But this is the overall gist of how the Ivory Road works for Grand Cathay. Another big mechanic for Cathay is the Wu-Jing Compass. So the Wu-Jing Compass harnesses the winds of magic to bring prosperity to Grand Cathay. Directing the compass fills the respective energy reserve. The greater the energy reserve, the larger the benefits are. However, the energy reserve of all directions will decay over time. So how this ultimately works is you'll choose in about 4 turns once you start the campaign, I think it's turn 5, one of the 4 cardinal directions. And each direction, based off the total energy reserve, will grant you passive benefits and then active benefits when it is pointed at that direction. So for example here, let's take a look at the Great Bastion. Everything right now, based off of my current existing energy reserve, will get 500 defensive supplies and then a casualty replenishment rate of 2% per region in Cathay. And as this energy reserve grows up to 11 to 16, all the way to a maximum of 17 to 20, you can see that it gives even more defensive supplies and casualty replenishment. But if I were to point the compass at Great Bastion, it's going to also give us these active when direction is set bonuses. So Great Bastion threat minus 2% per turn, recruitment cost minus 10% per region in Cathay, that's only applies to local armies, and then army ability Celestial Intervention, which is a massive bombardment here that does a ton of damage. It will easily delete 1 to 2 units depending on how you place it. So a really nice benefit for going to the Great Bastion. For Celestial Lake, it's going to give us a lot of growth up to a maximum of 15, but it's also going to give us a ton of income from all buildings at 15%, and then chance of winds of magic increasing in strength by 40% in Cathay. The Dragon Emperor's Wrath has some interesting bonuses here. So once you go all the way to the max, it gives us a control of 4 per region in Cathay, but also gives you this Dragon Emperor's Wrath, which applies attrition to any forces outside the Great Bastion. So this is a great way to not necessarily reduce the threat meter, but reduce the actual physical threats out there by just applying a ton of attrition. It's also a nice way to forge out from the Great Bastion and do a lot of damage to your enemy. Then lastly, we have the Warpstone Desert, which is one of the only, well, it is the only one without any passive effects. It only has active effects. And this will give Winds of Magic will steadily decrease in strength, corruption minus 4 per region in Cathay, and then enemy leadership minus 6 per region in Cathay, local enemy armies. And of course, anytime that this is not directed at one of these directions, so if you have, if you're directed at the Great Bastion, the Celestial Lake and the Dragon Emperor's Wrath, or the Dragon Emperor's Wrath, will decrease. You see it's got a little down arrow here, so it's showing you that it's going to decrease per turn. So just be mindful of that, but this is how the Wu-Jing Compass works. And a big part of how Cathay runs is harmony. It's present in the battlefield as well as the campaign map. And this mechanic I'm going to go through with you, even though I'm showing you Zhao Ming, will be exactly the same for Miao Ying. It just depends upon the characters that they start with, their buildings and whatnot. But this is the harmony scroll, the kind of meter here at the top that is going to show you how it is going to shift. So harmony is the balance of yin and yang across your faction. Characters, buildings, and technologies will all affect the balance. So you've got 4 different things that you kind of look for when it comes to finding balance with yin and yang. characters, events, buildings, and technology. So as you shift either towards yin or yang, it will give you set effects. So right now you can see diplomatic relations plus 10 with Cathay, growth, construction costs, reduction, and income increase from yin buildings, but an income reduction from yang buildings. And if I look at this little petal here of this blossom, I can see that this is what it's like for having yang 1 to 3, but even further for yang 4 to 6, and then lastly for yang 7 plus. This is reflected, this is just mirrored on the other side for yin 1 to 3, yin 4 to 6, and then yin 7 plus. So just again to give you a representation of this. So how this ultimately works is your armies will never affect this. The armies will only just happen on the actual camp or battle map. But events, buildings, and technology are very huge. So let's go ahead and take a look over here at Hanyu Port and press the building browser. You'll see that the infrastructure buildings all have yin or yang monikers. And you'll hover over them and it says this is going to give us yang +1, and it will block out all of its respective yin counterparts. Just like this one over here will give us yin +1, and it'll block out all of our respective yang counterparts. That's why there's 6 of these here, and they're coupled in 2s. So this is what it means by buildings. So you have to kind of make sure as you're making these buildings across your entire empire that the buildings are in harmony. Because if you get all 4 of these in harmony, you can see the harmony effects here when yin and yang are equal. Diplomatic relations +20 with Cathay, doubling it up from 10. Construction costs -20% for all buildings, growth 40, income +25% for both yin and yang, control 8, corruption -5, and then army ability ancestral warriors, which is a summon of ancestral warriors onto the battle map. Now the big thing here I do want to illustrate really quick is characters. It says 3 yang. That is because each legendary lord will increase your yang by yin or yang by 3. Whereas individual heroes will only do it by 1. So that's why it says 3. If you're looking at this from Miao Ying's perspective, it'll say characters 3 yin. So you'll want to balance that out as you play because you definitely want those things all in harmony as best you can. The last thing I do want to show is that technology also has yin and yang monikers. And as you go further down this, you'll see that it is still, just always look that it says harmony or yin +1, +2, +3, whatever it is, just to kind of keep an eye. It's like this one, for example, gives you harmony +3 yin. This one was +1 yin. So you always want to look at those to make sure you're not going to shoot too far one direction and really kind of throw your economy off balance. The last mechanic I want to go over before switching into character skills is the Great Bastion. Now, the Great Bastion is not really a mechanic that is heavy for Zhao Ming in the beginning. It's more really focused for Miao Ying, who starts right up next to it. But for continuity's sake, we're going to go over it. Even though it's not really big of a deal here, you won't really experience it until the mid to late portions of Zhao Ming's campaign, maybe even the kind of very late early game. But here's how this works. The Great Bastion protects Cathay from the forces of chaos. The threat level will build over time, and chaos will attack once it reaches the highest level. Armies will also breach the Great Bastion should any gates fall out of Cathayan hands. So basically, it's very similar to the Ulthuan mechanic where you're going to want these 3 gates held by Cathay. It doesn't need to be by your faction. It can be any Cathayan faction. But you can see right now the Snake Gate is ruined, so it adds 4% on top of the Kurgan Warband threat level of 12%. So this is going to go up by 16% every turn until it reaches 100. And at run 100, a little exclamation point is going to appear there, and basically the hordes of chaos from the Kurgan Warband are going to start slamming against the gates and try to break through. If they break through, it will just continue to go on. Basically, you want to mitigate that positive percentage with as many negative percentages on your end as you can. Doing that would include the Wujing Compass with the Great Bastion, which is going to reduce it by 2%, or even the actual individual gates have a commandment which will reduce it by 1%. So having those trip off and then actually killing the Kurgan warbands that are threatening you will help reduce this threat significantly, and they'll stop trying to attack. But as long as that threat's at 100%, they're going to reinforce and keep coming at the walls. So it gives you a chance to either stand at the walls and destroy them, or march out and destroy them before they get a chance to. So it's actually a really fun, cool mechanic. But again, we'll focus on it more in Miao Ying's video. I just wanted to go over it real quick. Moving into the character skills for Zhao Ming, we can see some of his really strong campaign effects. So for one, he gets magic item drop chance plus 100%. That is huge. So every battle he gets into, he's going to find a magic item. And that magic item might be terrible quality, might be great quality, who knows. But with the new fuse mechanic that we've got, where you can fuse 2 of the same category item into a random new item, you can get a ton of rare items very, very quickly and easily. It's an awesome mechanic. Also, he gets upkeep minus 25% for melee units, and his harmony is plus 3 yang. So this couples very well with his existing melee unit bonus, or I believe it's melee attack right here. Oh, upkeep, or I'm sorry, no, yeah, it's armor for melee units. So that works very well hand in hand. As far as his abilities go, he can obviously transform into a dragon. He starts with Plague of Rust and Dragon's Breath, which is great because Dragon's Breath can be used in dragon form. That's just a huge boon. It's a very fast ability. Also gets Mastery of Elemental Winds. When 2 or more units in the same army share this attribute, intensity increases the power of spells cast. So it encourages you to bring plenty of spellcasters in a Cathayan army. Let's move over to his actual skills here. We can see some fun stuff here. So across his skill tree, there are a lot of goodies. So going into just the blue line, it's your typical kind of blue line with Route Marcher, Iron Disciplinarian, Recruitment Cost, Attrition, Corruption, Irrepressible. Lightning Strikes here, let's go over this. It says enables lightning strike battles when reinforcements are present. Enemy battle reinforcement rate plus 50%. So what's important here is that the option to carry out a lightning strike battle will appear on the pre-battle panel. Enabling this prevents reinforcements from joining the battle, but will cause your troops to start the battle with reduced vigor. So a lot of people have asked how the level 3 of lightning strike works. It will increase enemy battle reinforcement time by 50% if you do not elect to use a lightning strike battle. Otherwise, it will completely cut off reinforcements, just like we've seen in Warhammer 1 and 2, but your units will start a little bit lower with their vigor. So just to kind of go over Lightning Strike real quick there. But Quartermaster, Logistician, Alert, and then lastly, the Great Bastion, which will reduce upkeep, recruitment rank, and then local recruitment capacity, increasing here for your Lord. Going across the red line, it's just, again, what you would expect, buffing up your military in each respective unit category as you go across this line here, then into rally, and then these over here. Just typical standard fare. Now for his actual spell kit, he has a combination of the Lore of Metal and the Lore of Yang, starting with the Plague of Rust into Strength of Yang, which is the lore attribute here for Yang, giving us base weapon and AP damage plus 24%. Metal Shifting, Dragon's Breath, Wall of Wind and Fire, which is probably one of the coolest looking spells I've ever seen, Glittering Robe, Evasion, Constellation of the Dragon, and then Final Transmutation with Earthing, Magical Reserve, and lastly Arcane Conduit. Remember, Arcane Conduit is a passive now. It gives a 40% power recharge rate, and it is always active. Now for his yellow line, again, it's just your standard fare stuff. Nothing crazy here, not even any cool spell abilities. Bow Seeker and Deadly Onslaught, nothing crazy. Now for his unique line, he does have some sweet spells, or sweet abilities, jeez. So he gets cooldown minus 25% to Lore of Metal spells, but wins a magic cost reduction for Final Transmutation, and wins a magic cost for Plague of Rust is reduced as well. But he gets Final Transmutation upgraded and the Plague of Rust upgraded for both of them, which is just so nice. And then Lord of Shangyang, this is going to help with diplomatic relations and Ogre Mercenary recruitment cost and upkeep reduction, stacking with his existing one. Strange Alchemy is going to help with construction cost reduction of all buildings and hero capacity and recruitment rank for all of your alchemists. Then Iron Scale gives him regeneration, which is glorious, AP weapon damage for his entire army, and then he himself gets 30 AP weapon damage increase. So a very nice set of abilities there. And as with the Alchemist, he gets Master of Alchemy, which will give him base weapon damage and base missile damage increase and magic attacks. It's an imbuable activatable ability. So within a 100-meter range, for 35 meters around in a radius, he can imbue magical attacks and increase weapon damage and missile damage. But he can even further change this into flaming, piercing, or poison. So he can add flaming attacks onto here and increase the weapon and missile damage at a base amount even higher. Or do piercing, which is going to increase all of the base but also AP damage for both missile and weapons. And then lastly, he's going to do the same amount. I think it's 30. Yeah, 30 and 25 will be magic and poison attacks. So you have some options to choose here. But another nice thing I do really like about his skill tree here are these three at the top. So Warding Iron is a damage resistance of 5%, which is lovely. But also Desert Weapons is going to give a 15% bonus to melee units' weapon strength. And Iron Strength gives a 10% bonus to melee units' melee attack. So he has so many ways to buff up melee units in a really cool way that you're really going to want to take advantage of that. Desert Armor is armor for him. Range Discipline gives him missile resistance, and then Wind Harmony. What you'll notice though is he does not have any special or quest items, and I find that totally fine because he gets tons of items as it is from the magic item drop chance, and the caravans are really your way to pull magic items into him, special unique items that no one else can get access to. So you use those caravans to kind of give him what would be the equivalent of quest items for other characters. Jumping into the tech tree now for Cathay, you can see this is a pretty wild tech tree. It goes all the way down and then gets back big again, down, then big again. So you'll do this 3 times over and over. And through each one of these, we've kind of talked about this in the harmony section, but it's just kind of worth mentioning here again. They all have a distinction of which harmony they will influence. This is going to give us yin versus this one is going to give us yang. And usually at the secondary kind of tier of these, we'll have a further yin or yang increase. So look over here at yin hex, it gives a harmony of +3 yin. Or inner speed over here is going to give us a +3 yang. So you just kind of be mindful of when you're working your way through these that you don't throw your harmony off balance too much. I actually really like the Cathayan research tree. It's very complex, but also really cool at the same time. You can really focus it down to making tons of benefits for your missile units. So, okay, what do I type in here? Is it ranged? There's so many different things you can type in. I don't even remember what it is anymore. Let's go peasants. So I can get all these things that are going to be benefiting my peasant units. Or let's just type in jade. Well, here's all the stuff that's going to help my jade units. So it just kind of depends on what kind of units you want to use in your army. And there's so many ways to increase those units across a lot of these technologies that it really can bolster them in ways that are just really, really stupid strong. You know, like this is going to help with upkeep, recruitment rank. You get improved winches here, which is going to help with the range. Pole arms for melee attack. Couple that with a lot of the innate benefits that you get as either one of your characters. It really makes the technology for Cathay really, really cool and expansive. And keep in mind too, you can do stuff like alignment calibration that helps with the Wuxing compass cooldown reduction. So it's not just simply benefiting all of your units. There are a lot of things to the actual base mechanics here. Last time I tried to find this, yeah, there is an actual caravan mechanic here that I have such a hard time finding every time I want to look for it. But you can actually influence the caravans in here as well. So here, Lord Recruitment Rank for Caravan Master +3. There's other ways that you can actually help out with the cargo in here. It's somewhere in here, I just can't find it right now. But still, there's not just simply units, there are mechanic tweaks in these tech trees. Moving into the battle mechanics for Cathay, we have some very interesting ones. When we took a look at something like Corn, it was pretty simple, right? Kill things, reap the toll, and then you'll get abilities as you go more and more into them. Or things like Demon Prince were a little more straightforward. With Cathay, it's very, not difficult, but it's a little more complex. It's all about placement and trying to utilize the same harmony that you're doing in the campaign map represented here onto the battle map. So taking a look at the Peasant Archers, they get Battle Harmony Yin, which is going to be reload skill and leadership. Your units are either Yin or Yang. If it's Yin, it's going to be range bonuses. Well, leadership's not necessarily range bonus, but still, reload skill is. Or you're going to be Yang, which is going to give you leadership and melee defense. And you'll see here that says 6 up to 12 because there are certain modifiers. Activates when within 45 meters of a yin unit. Effect intensity increases by highest nearby harmony multiplier on a unit, which will go off in just a little bit. So taking a look, if we click at both of them, you can see this unit here, this yang unit, or yin unit, has this brownish, dark, gray, black circle around it, much in the same way of the encourage on any of your leader characters. And then the same thing here on the Jade Warriors, you can see the white/light gray circle around. And as you kind of move this, you'll notice the little symbol above, Harmony Yin, Harmony Yang. Get closer and closer and closer. And it can just be just shy of the fat of the banner, the unit banner. You'll see it'll kind of start to trip on there. So there you go. That's like kind of like the minimum distance there. But as they kind of get in conjunction, they'll get this bonus. It'll turn on, it'll activate, right? Enabled. And you can tell because the symbol has now become, rather than just one or the other, it's two in conjunction with a circle around it, right? They're their respective one. So this is a Harmony Yang is now glowing with a yin underneath it. Same thing here. This is a yin with the yang above it. Well, let's take a look at Zhao Ming. He has a harmony amplifier of 100%, and other characters, such as I think it's the Magistrate, that's its name, can increase this modifier even further. So again, just looking at the Jade Warriors, 6 leadership, 6 melee defense will bring Zhao Ming right in range, and his is his overall encourage circle, his sphere, right? So this is going to be able to really span across a lot of your units. And we take a look at the Jade Warriors now. And it says up to 12. They get that max bonus because it's doubled what it was existing. And this won't stack. So if I have 2 characters that give 100% modifier, it doesn't go to 200. It goes to whatever the highest one is. You'll notice that the Junks, for example, give 25%. So Zhao Ming's would countermand that and just be 100% flat. There's no other units I can see. There's no other multipliers I can see across this army. But there's 2 other things that Cathay gets, and it is 1, formation attack. So basically this works very similar to defense but different. It'll force the unit to kind of stay in a nice orderly line. It won't become a kind of amalgamous blob that stays in one place. It'll just make sure it stays this nice, neat kind of defensive structure. It makes it a little bit easier to make sure that yin and yang are tripping off. So formation attack is one thing, and it will kind of confuse you when you jump into the game because you'll notice that your units will move very rigidly. So you have to kind of adapt to that as you play Cathay, because it will be like, wow, I feel like my unit's not doing what I want it to. It's because formation attack is on, which you can turn off, but it does help to keep things in a neat, orderly line for yin and yang purposes. Yo, Zhao, stop flying back there. Also, you get defensive stance, which is going to give charge resistance at 10%, but after 10 seconds, it'll jump to 25% and armor plus 10. So this is great for your Jade Warriors. Not everything gets it. Most things will just get, like you can see here, the Peasant Longbowmen. They'll just get their standard charge reflection that most all polearm units get. So just kind of keep that in mind as you're playing through with Cathay. But that is the battle mechanics for the Grand Cathayan military. So hopefully all of that gives you an idea of how the Cathayan mechanics work together hand in hand to create the campaign here for Zhao Ming. But the ultimate question is, how does the Iron Dragon play on the campaign map? And is it the right campaign for you? What kind of overall scope are we looking at? And the difference between Zhao Ming and Miao Ying is that Zhao is really focused here, if I take a look at the map, on solidifying and controlling the interior of Cathay. You really are going to be spending a lot of time in this location right here, the Warpstone Desert, as well as the wastelands of Jinshen, and then moving south and into the Mountains of Morn. You're going to be playing a lot alongside with or in conflict with the ogres. So that is really Zhao's ultimate focus. And of course, too, with that, you're going to want a lot of anti-large units, and some of the best Cathayan anti-large units are melee, playing very well into this style of campaign for Zhao. You're going to have a lot of melee units because you get so many skills and passive benefits to melee units that you're just going to want to take native control of that. So if you want to play a campaign where you are really trying to be this Cathayan powerhouse, expanding southward into, well, I guess this would technically be westward, it's looking at it on the map, into the Mountains of Morn and controlling a lot of the hinterland of Cathay, then Zhao Ming is definitely going to be the character for you. And on top of it, my personal opinion, I love the lore of Yang over the lore of Yin. It's destructive, there's just tons of fire and everything and explosions, and being able to use some of those abilities in dragon form for Zhao Ming just makes him extremely badass. So that's the overall gist and campaign overview, the spoiler-free breakdown of how this Cathay in general works. Tomorrow we'll be going over Miao Ying and kind of giving you a juxtaposition between these two, because Miao does, it's really funny to just say Miao. Miao Ying does play very different from Zhao in her overall campaign focus, and I think it'll just depend upon how you want to play each one. But if you have any other questions about Zhao Ming's campaign or anything else you want to know that I maybe didn't cover in this video, go ahead and let me know in the comment section below. But as always, guys, thank you so much for watching here today. Have a good one and take care.